want you to be able to leave here understanding why the intellectual property that is sports content is so valuable today. The only kind of content that has any value is unique, that's consumed live, that's consumed communal, that is not disrupted by generative AI, is live sports. And that is why it has become the most important kind of intellectual property in this rapidly transforming media landscape.
In this particular situation, it took us 18 months to make a decision. He's laughing. To 18 months to decide that we were going to invest with Arctos. Okay? A lot of people don't know this. Ian said this in other settings, but literally one of the very first meetings they had was in our office. And everybody on my team will tell you that Christopher was the skeptic. I was the one that just couldn't be convinced. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you through, obviously not 18 months worth, but we're going to give you an idea of how we approached the opportunity, the asset class, and we're going to apply what we talked about and kind of break apart why we decided that we were going to focus on sports as a major asset class for our personal capital. So obviously inviting every one of you to come alongside with us. So what we're going to do is focus in the same thematic way, find the theme, find the best risk reward in that theme, and then find the best partners to be able to take advantage of that theme. So, Ian, why is cord cutting such a powerful tailwind?
First of all, we killed it in that meeting. I mean, it was damn near perfect, but it did take 18 months. And I wouldn't even want to start this conversation without just thanking everybody in the room, thanking CAZ, thanking Christopher and the rest of the team. It's been an incredible partnership, and we're very grateful for it. Cord cutting. I'm kind of nerdy. I'm going to throw a lot of data out at you, but what I want to do is I want you to be able to leave here understanding why the intellectual property that is sports content is so valuable today and why it has so much potential to increase in value over the next 10 years. Cord cutting refers to getting rid of your cable. At its peak, there were 100 million US households that paid for cable, 85% household penetration rate. Over the last 8 years, that number has fallen to about 47 million. It's more than 50% decline. No surprise, the ratings for scripted content on linear cable television are down about 45 to 50%. That's what happens when half your customers disappear. But today, 85% of US households have a streaming service. On average, there are 3.4 streaming services per house. So what cord cutting actually refers to is the shift within the media ecosystem from traditional linear cable to streaming companies. Over the last 8 years, as this cord cutting phenomenon has taken place, the revenue generated by the traditional linear media companies, you know them as Disney, Fox, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Comcast, but also the 4 big streaming players, Google, Amazon, Netflix, Apple. Over the last 8 years, the revenue that they've generated from video services and video ads has grown from about 110 billion to about 180 billion, 6.5% per year. But inside that growth has been a major power shift, where today, the streaming revenue is growing about 25% per year, and linear is only growing at 5%, okay? Within the linear cable system, 8 years ago, they spent 13% of their revenue on sports content. Today, despite all the growth in the cost of sports content, they only spend 16% of their revenue on sports. They spend about 30% on scripted content, okay? So cord cutting refers to this power shift from linear to streaming. The streaming companies today spend 1% of their ad and video revenue on sports content, compared to 16% for the linear systems, okay? The last thing I want to touch on, because it's connected, but it's different than cord cutting, and that's what we call the content glut. Today, Hollywood generates about 15,000 hours of content per year. Shows, movies. YouTube generates 300 million hours of content. So there's 2 content things that are unlocking at the same time. One is user-generated content, and the other is AI-generated content. Okay? AI is going to disrupt scripted content, and the canary in the coal mine is going to be animation. Animations first, because kids, they're not that picky. Disney released a movie last year, Disney and Pixar, that took 700 people, 5 years, and $200 million to produce. It was an animation about emotions. An AI studio just released a movie called Where Robots Grow, based on a kid's book. It took 7 people, 3 months, and $800 grand. The thing you need to start to think about is if you could put AI tools in the hands of users that are generating 300 million hours of content and just 0.1% of it is good enough, that's 20 times the content that Hollywood generates. When scripted content is exponential, the only kind of content that has any value is unique, that's consumed live, that's consumed communal, that is not disrupted by generative AI, is live sports. And that is why it has become the most important kind of intellectual property in this rapidly transforming media landscape. And through our partnership with CAZ, you guys are long the most important sports media intellectual property in the world, and that's the big 4 North American sports leagues.
The theme's pretty clear. So that's obviously the first thing that we look for, is that persistent theme that we believe is not going to go away over a couple of months or even a couple of years. This is a long-term theme. But then we must focus on the risk-reward.
We believe this is one of the most durable, resilient private market strategies available today that has compounded at or better than public markets over very long periods of time, again, with very low leverage and very little or no correlation. So we think it's a very compelling downside case with tremendous upside notes.
Well, and I've told you, and we laughed about this, that if you had, in that first meeting, I had heard that, it might have been a
You were distracted. I don't know what you were doing. You weren't paying attention because it was like clear as day. Just saying.
So, but what it did, though, when we really got into it and understood the 132nd, the 130th, the residual, the recurring revenues, the stadium rights. I mean, NRG is going to pay, what they have to pay on that stadium. Methodist Hospital is going to pay what they have to pay in the stadium. Those are long-term, durable contracts, and it made me feel very similar to GP stakes, because the contractual obligated management fees are very similar to what we're going to get from those long-term media contracts, average 13 years worth of duration of those contracts. That's very predictable, and that provides a lot of downside protection. You'll also remember one of my kind of challenges that I had is that I grew up in an era where most of the people that owned professional sports teams, it was just a trophy asset for them. They wanted to be able to tell people that they owned a sports team. They weren't actually as focused on the economic return. So I had this perception that it was just a trophy asset for rich people to be able to own and just say they own something at the cocktail party. So we still hear that a lot. Overcome that objection.
I'm not going to try to overcome it. To say that it's not an awesome thing for people that like that is disingenuous. It is the fastest path to civic leadership in this country. Being the steward for one of these assets in one of the most important communities in North America is an incredible opportunity for people that can afford it. But what's happened in the last 15 years, because the intellectual property has become monetizable over very long, durable, growing contracts, under the surface, not obvious to everyone, what's called the cost of carry of these assets has gone from negative, where you have to feed money into the asset. Right? If Chris and I want to arbitrage crude oil, the cost of carry is actually storing that crude oil, protecting it, paying the cost of the interest, and then hoping we can sell it for a price that's higher than all of the cost of carrying that. Sports assets used to have a cost of carry. You used to have to feed them with cash. But now the cost of carry is negative. They send you cash. And that has a real impact on valuations and the attractiveness of these assets to a much broader set of investors.
It's something also where the governing body of these leagues are owned by the teams themselves, so they have an economic alignment to want to see them make as much money as possible. There's very few regulators out there in the world that regulate somebody and say, we want to help you make money. So that was another thing that really got me comfortable with the downside scenario. So you talked about price. I mean, these numbers are huge, and they think that, it's just, they can't keep going. So the perception that even with this tailwind of cord cutting is that people are not going to make a very good return anymore, even though they have in the past, because people just have to pay so much today. How would you answer that question?
It's So we partnered with the University of Michigan 2 years ago to start building the world's deepest data set of professional sports transactions in the big four North American leagues. It's not a sexy name. I think it's called the Ross Arctos Sports Franchise Index, the RASFI. And if you look at the RASFI's compounding in any 5 to 10 year period for the last 50 years, it's very hard to find a period where North American sports hasn't compounded at least 9 to 11%. It's also really hard for it to find a 5 to 10 year period where it compounds above an 18 or a 19. It has this very predictable low double-digit return profile, again with very little leverage. Our job as a manager, where we generate alpha on top of that beta, is by partnering with great operators in great markets who have a vision to unlock growth and outperform the rest of their league beta, and where we can buy at a discount to intrinsic value and use structure to enhance the return. And so in a wide range of economic environments, these assets have protected your wealth from that, what'd you call it, a dragon that is inflation.
Mm-hmm.
They have kept pace or beaten public equities and been comparable to private equities, again, without that leverage and with very low correlation. This is one of the only things I've seen in my career that can be a return enhancer and a risk reducer in a diversified portfolio. And our job is to provide an alpha overlay on top of that. And this is coming just from a huge nerd. I'm not even really a sports fan, which kind of freaks people out. I just love private markets, and this is a really beautiful sector.
Digital is unique in that it provides access to be able to watch games in ways that we haven't been able to watch them before, and many places where we haven't been able to watch them before. Talk a little bit about what's happening with this digital content across the leagues, and specifically, if anything, in the NFL compared to the others, or how that really is changing the revenue model for some of these businesses.
My favorite thing that's coming is augmented reality. And it's coming soon. Adam Silver demonstrated this at the NBA Tech Summit 2 years ago. Pretty soon, on one of the streaming platforms, you're going to be able to take your camera and do a quick 360 around your kid who doesn't want to watch the game with you. I don't like watching football. But you're going to be able to scan your 11-year-old daughter and for $10, graft her on the quarterback of the other team. I'm not joking. Google it. Adam Silver, Ahmad Rashad, and with no lag, she will be in the game getting absolutely throttled by your team's defensive end. And it's funny, but you'll also be able to upload her best friend to be the running back and her classmate to be the wide receiver. And she'll get to watch her friend group play your favorite team. That's coming. And the monetization of the household in that way is incredible, because when it's done, for $5, they can download their TikTok highlight reel and push it out to all their friends. That's coming. And the leagues are hyper-focused on how to bring this unique interactive feature to the consumer. And again, that's just an upside node that people don't see.
We're going to have some rapid-fire responses, so literally just quick responses.
These are dangerous.
Yes, they are.
All right.
What is the probability of your investing anytime soon in the following sports, and why or why not?
Probability, okay.
Esports.
0.
Why?
It's not a media asset. It's not a sport.
Oh, there's some people going to get mad at that comment.
It's actually a terrible business, because the real value is owned by the publisher. And so anytime the esports leagues or the teams start to generate any kind of value, the publisher squeezes them. It's not a good business. The people that we know that are in esports are trying to get out. It has a very venture kind of risk return profile, more negative skew. That's just not what we pitch our investors, so it's a 0.
Got it. Cricket.
Low but not 0.
Low but not 0.
Low but not 0. It's one of the more popular sports in the world. The media rights value of that asset, if it's dollar denominated, is pretty attractive. Not 0, but not high.
I was blown away. I guess it was in Long Island. They had the game this past summer.
Yeah.
They had, how many people watched that? 1 billion people around the world.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Think so much bigger than the Super Bowl to watch India and Pakistan play cricket in Long Island. Fascinating. They built the stadium specifically for this one game, or for this tournament that they did there. Australian rules football.
Damn near 0.
Rugby.
I think that's the same thing, 0.
Okay. And the most popular one among many in this audience, pickleball.
Also 0. I'll put money on the line to play pickleball with anybody in here, but I don't think
I know some people in this audience that are really good, so you better be careful there. Some former tennis players that I know that are, they're pretty
I'll
strong.
snap their racket.
Okay, so let's go to another topic that is very timely. We have a very big game come Monday night, and so college sports is very much in the conversation. So the business model of college has been completely upended by NIL and the transfer portal, and we're not going to debate the merits or the pros and the cons of those things, but we know the system's changed, and come June, I guess it is, or July, there's going to be this new settlement, and it is either going to completely destroy the ability of many universities to have any athletic program, or they're going to have to find another solution. So we know that there's talk about things that might happen, and we can't talk about specifics here, but what can you tell us about the probability of investing in college athletics, and what form might that take?
Okay, so I've actually talked a lot about this in the public domain. I think there is a high probability private equity will invest in collegiate athletics in the next 24 months. And I think that is almost certainly a bad thing. This is a very fragile moment for collegiate athletics. Collegiate athletics is wobbling. It's losing a bit of its soul. And these programs matter to communities in this country. And the idea that you could put some pref or a loan from a private equity house on top of that fragile system, on top of a nonprofit organization probably run by an ex-coach to earn a high teens, double-digit rate of return, I think that's kind of gross. And I'm worried that an institution that really matters in this country is going to get its face ripped off and damage a community for a long time. And so I'm out there cautioning people. I don't think private equity, it's not a good look for private equity to be increasing the fragility of that system right now. There are ways to stabilize it. There are some really cool ideas out there, but that's not what people tend to be pitching. It's easy to throw a piece of paper on somebody who doesn't really understand it. It's really easy to grab a revenue stream from a club and give them money up front so they can spend it on NIL, but I'm not a big fan of that. I hope it doesn't happen.
The conversations that I've had with folks that in the academic world and the athletic department world is they know there's a problem and they know they need to find a solution, but so far none of them have been really comfortable with what the implications are of taking outside capital. Are private universities and public universities treated the same? Are they different? One has more flexibility than the other, and it's a mess, and it's really unfortunate, but hopefully over the next 12 to 24 months they can get it sorted out, and we can get back to just focusing on great football like we're going to see Monday.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, look, football is its own animal, and so any kind of solution really needs to segment football and treat it in its own unique way. But the idea that your women's lacrosse team at USC has to fly to New Jersey to play an in-conference game, that's insane. So some reorganization and realignment of the non-football athletics can actually be a huge financial win for these schools just through cost savings of $20 million in reduced travel costs. So I hope that that's part of the solution. But I'm really nervous.
So what do people either misunderstand or not appreciate as much as they should about investing in sports?
One of my favorite stats that I've learned in this industry over the last 5 years is the single best predictor of a fan for life is if you can get a kid to go to a game before they turn 14. If you can get them in the venue, you got them for life with a 90% conversion rate. That happened to me. My dad took me to a baseball game when I was 11, and I can still smell it. I remember the sounds. I don't know what the conversion rate is for that little girl who was the quarterback sitting next to her father in their living room. It's probably not 90%, but if it's 50% or higher, and you can bring that kind of conversion rate into the home and engage those kids, that's pretty exciting to think about, the future of fandom being driven by some of this technology.
Just give them a reason to actually care and want to be there and be engaged.
Absolutely.
And obviously the opportunity to be able to build that relationship with that child around the sports just means that they remember their grandparents, their parents, etc., and they have that affinity that lasts for a very, very long time. And that's why they're called, you say it all the time, they're fanatics. That's what a fan is they're a fanatic. And that's the way you get them, is get them when it's emotionally attached to something that they're really passionate about, in this case, a family member. One of our core principles is find what matters, see the forest, not the trees. So at this time in the theme of cord cutting in professional sports, what should we be focusing on that really matters, something that you would want to be sure that people remember when they leave here tonight?
Is it okay if it's not about the investing side?
Absolutely.
The industry of sport it's a beautiful communal thing. It's a tribal thing. And for someone who's not passionate about that, I've really learned to love how much people love sports. I'm a huge data nerd, and I love charts. I saw a chart right before the holidays that broke my heart. It was a Google trend search that just was like going exponential. And the question was, where do I go to meet other people?
Wow.
People are lonely, especially young men. Sports brings people together. And if you can take anything from this session tonight, if there's a young man in your life, tell him he's doing a good job. Tell him you love him, that he's going to be okay. You can make a huge difference to people. They need a friend. It's in the data. I see it in these arenas and in these venues every time I'm out there. If you could just leave here and do that one thing, I'd be grateful for it.